The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. The Crystal Empire Interlude. Section 2, Part 2. Elias walked lazily down the Candlelight streets, doing nothing in particular. His mind felt surprisingly blank, a rare sensation that he took great pleasure in, instead of the ever-present floods of thoughts and analyzations that filled his mind. For once, Elias was allowed to choose his thoughts, and he decided to walk back on a few recent memories. The day's training was done, and he was off duty for the night. In truth, he had no idea why that was. Nightshade had been rather coy when he asked, and after a few wasted minutes of trying to force an answer out of her, he had given up and had accepted his sudden leave. That had left him to walk home with his armor strung together over his shoulder. He passed by a bakery, giving a small wave to Baked Loaf. She had scolded him for ducking her invitation to visit, but now they talked every day when Elias walked to the castle. She would tell him about how well her business was doing, and Elias would talk about how well training was going. She would then give him a bagel, and he would be on his way. It was a simple pleasure, but a pleasure nonetheless. It paled at comparison to home, though. Bookbinder and Nightflash had secured their new house, and as soon as they had moved themselves in, they had come in for him with a wagon, a dozen cardboard boxes, and an alicorn princess with an eviction notice on her hoof if he refused to go with them. He had taken it all with good intentions, the actions had, but had gotten in his own little blow. After the kiss he and Luna had shared on the night of the wedding, Elias had asked her for a small break to think. In reality, he had used the time to finally withdraw his guard pay to pay back the alicorn a special gift. She happened to pack the portion of the room with a friendship ring on it, and upon finding it, he had asked her to be his mare friend. The panic that ensued was anything but small, as Luna tried to start unpacking his belongings. When Bookbinder had protested, she and Luna had gotten into an argument that grew heated. The tiff, Nightflash had called it, had resulted with Luna backed into a corner by a growling and hissing Bookbinder. Once the alicorn had bowed her head in submission, Bookbinder had gone after Elias, threatening him with a family bath if he didn't get the rest of his things together. It was then that Nightflash had stepped in, and with Elias's help, they managed to convince both mares that nobody was being left behind. The talk had switched to the future, about plans to be made and dates to be set. When the W word had come up, Luna had pounced Elias, pressing her lips against his. Like a switch was flipped, Bookbinder turned over from protective mom to loving mother-in-law. She took Luna by the wing aside to talk, leaving Elias and Nightflash to finish packing. It didn't take the pair long to do so. He didn't have much in the way of personal belongings, but Nightflash assured him that would once change once they got him settled. Once his remaining belongings were outside and tied to the wagon, Bookbinder and Luna had popped back up, talking and giggling as they have been the best friends forever. Their smiles had grown wider when they found Elias packed and ready to go. Luna had wished them all a farewell, and then she had given Elias a kiss on the cheek and a rump wiggle before trotting away, leaving the man with his jaw agape and his cheeks flushed red. Bookbinder took this opportunity of a stunned silence that had brought and hopped onto his shoulders, clinging to his head and pointing in the direction of the house with a cry of joy. The house looked small from the outside. It was 2 stories tall and was fairly slim. The door was shorter than Elias was, resulting in him having to duck. More assurances came over about how the carpenter was supposed to come in within the week to fix the door. But Elias didn't really notice the short doorway. He could walk through the rest of the house without issue, and after a short tour of the downstairs space, Nightflash and Bookbinder led him upstairs. The entire floor was designated as his room. It had a full bathroom and clear signs that it once had been split into 3 bedrooms. The paint was slightly uneven where the previous walls had been ripped out, but Elias wasn't one to complain. The new room was at least twice the size of his room in the castle, if not more, and it already had a few pieces of furniture, as well as some other homey decorations. The floor was largely hardwood, but a massive blue rug covered the floor next to his bed. Nightflash joked about having to get a alicorn-sized mattress for it. The curtains for his windows matched the rugs, and as did his bedspread. When asked about the color choice, Bookbinder had giggled and said, "I think your mare friend will like it." Elias had rolled his eyes, but in truth, there was nothing he could do but smile. His belongings were simple to put away, and his unofficial parents had left him to unpack. By the time he had finished, the sun had begun to set, and his stomach had started to rumble. When he had gone downstairs, he had been surprised to find the house packed with ponies and food, all of which were inviting. To his surprise, Luna attended the housewarming party in the gown that she had worn to Bookbinder at Night Flash's wedding, making him feel woefully underdressed. She had used that fact to great advantage, and by the end of the evening, they found themselves in his bedroom, revisiting their kiss in detail. After that had come talks about the future, and then further kissing when the talk had gotten stale. By the time midnight rolled around, they had bare-bones plans laid out, and they simply cuddled, holding each other loosely as they savored each other's presence. Elias smiled at the memory of Bookbinder storming up the stairs with a broom. Apparently he and Luna had been making a ruckus, which earned him a scolding. She had then shooed the fluff-brained harlot from his bed. The game was obvious as the two went in circles around his room, with Luna diving in to snatch the occasional kiss from Elias. What swipes Bookbinder did manage to land were gentle, and both mares grinned as the chase continued. It had come to an end with Luna giving him a wink and a rump wiggle before departing to the castle. The days that followed were a blur. The Yellowcorn's primary sat openly on his chest, and the whispers of a second royal wedding began circling in the castle's rumor mill. Eliza's night shift were largely spent with his mare friend, either standing as her personal guard or taking on an assistant role in getting things started out for the Saddle-Arabian March. But tonight he had free time, and he had no idea what he was going to do with it. Elias slipped his keys from his pouch on his sword belt, and as soon as he opened the door to the house, Elias had his answer. Night Flash paced back and forth as he tried to get glimpses of red past the trio of healers working on him. They had made it back to the train without incident, and Night Flash had secured a car specifically for the human. Since the elements were staying in the Empire, one had been free, and is now functioning as Red's personal medical ward. The train was chugging along towards Camelot, but it would be hours before they reached the city. The scouts had gotten word to the second cohort in record time, and the ponies had moved like lightning. No Legionnaire had been left behind, nor had any of their equipment. As soon as everyone was loaded, the train had departed. The motion had caused Red to groan, which Night Flash had taken as a good sign. At least it meant he was still alive. Night Flash stopped mid-step as the human moaned something again. The Blue Pegasus stuck his head between the two healers, eager to see if his human was awake. The kind heart pushed him back. Night Flash whined slightly, but didn't protest. He instead immediately set back to pacing, casting the occasional glance at Red. "Come on, buddy," he whispered. "Pull through. I'll do anything to have you back."
Surprise!
Every light in the house suddenly flipped on with the sound of dozens of voices filling his ears. Out of shock, he took a step back. His direction was immediately reversed by a green aura surrounding his body and yanking him into the house. Elias quickly found himself buried in a pile of his fluffiest friends and family, all of whom either laughed at his flushed expression or wished him a happy birthday. Usually both. One pair of ponies in particular found their way against the center of the pile, and both snuggled against him with happy smiles on their face. Bookbinder kissed his cheek.
Happy birthday, baby boy. Did we surprise you?
Elias tried to nod, but found that he couldn't with Scarlet's rump pressed against his head. "You did. Mostly because I'm fairly certain I never told you my birthday." Bookbinder giggled as Night Flash wriggled his way into Elias's arms.
Maybe not, but you did tell that mare friend of yours.
She clicked her tongue and sighed.
Some filly trying to take my baby away, and she knows his birthday before I do? What's the world coming to, Flashy?
The Pegasus chuckled and nuzzled Elias's chin.
Something good, I bet. Red's gonna have falls before us at this rate.
Whoa, hold on now, Elias protested. That's a bit. The pile seemed to vanish, and Elias locked eyes with Luna. She seemed to glow, and everything about her seemed to attract him. Even the coy grin on her muzzle as she sauntered forward invited him in.
A bit what, lover?
She asked.
Don't tell me you want to go back on our plan.
No, never, Elias stuttered. Luna grinned with a flap, and she leaped onto his chest and pressed her lips against his. Elias melted into her kiss, and Luna had no trouble taking the offered space. Her tongue invaded his mouth, combing over every inch, dominating him completely. Only when their breath was running short did she pull away. Her eyes shined at him as she stared down at him with a wide smile.
Happy birthday, lover,
She said.
Get what you wished for?
Elias braced her cheeks and smiled. I think He felt something in his mind halt, and when Luna tried to lean in again, he ever so gently pushed her away. The blue alicorn tilted her head slightly, her smile never diminishing.
What's wrong, love? Did I not do a good enough job?
Elias shook his head. No, it's... something isn't right. This... He looked around to find the party in full swing. Scarlet was blindfolded and being led around by Night Flash. Their crimson Pegasus blindly swung at a piñata, causing laughter as he missed time and time again. Bookbinder was chatting with Nightshade and Midnight Chaser. Her parents stood near the punch table, while Night Flash's family chatted with guests near the stairs. What struck him the most is that they were all smiling, all laughing. They were all happy. Happy for him. And he was happy. Or at least, he had been. Elias felt something creep down his cheeks, and after a moment he realized it was a tear. But for the life of him, he couldn't understand why he was crying. But then suddenly he knew. It struck him like a bolt of lightning, and he felt a numbness creep through his body. This isn't real, he whispered. Luna sighed and nuzzled his chin.
Of course not, love. You are a brave, strong leader. But in your bravery, you have become isolated. In reality, you have nobody to turn to. But what is so wrong with enjoying a fantasy? Just for a little while. Are you not allowed to be happy for one night?
Elias smiled slightly at the alicorn's words. He rubbed her cheeks and met her eyes again. Well, maybe just for one. The bright lights vanished in a blink. Elias's arms were extended into a dark, cold room. Nobody was there. He was alone. There was no house, no party. There was no family, no friends, and certainly no Luna. Elias felt completely numb as he let his arm drop to his covers. He sat in the dark for a while, simply staring into the darkness. His mind was alight with the thoughts and choices he had made, and he couldn't help but wonder what could have been. Luna shot awake at her desk, her heart pounding. Keepers that dream. She had been with Elias. They had been together. He had been filled with so much love and happiness, and she had the pleasure of being a part of that. He had been happy. Everything had gone so well and had seemed so real. She was a master at creating dreams, but even she couldn't quite believe that at least some of it hadn't happened. It was only when they were at the birthday celebration that Elias seemed to see through the illusion, had been able to penetrate the dream enough that she could also see it for what it was. But as suddenly as he had noticed, she had been cut off. No doubt a sign of the dream had ended. Luna blearily rubbed at her eyes as she looked towards the curtained windows behind her desk. Cracking the curtains open, she swore as blinding sunlight stabbed right into her tired eyes. Daytime. That meant Elias should have been awake. Ever since he had left the Lunar Guard, he had shifted back to a daytime work schedule, nighttime sleep schedule. Had she been able to use her dream magic, she would have spent many an evening trying to soothe his dreams, but alas, she was unable to. But that begged the question, Why had he been asleep? It was far too early in the day for him to be dozing off from exhaustion, and the General Bright she knew didn't take naps. The only logical conclusion she could draw from that information was that somebody was keeping him asleep. Somebody at least as good as Dreamcraft as she was. If he was being kept asleep, that meant he was in trouble. And if he was in trouble... She blinked as a scroll popped into existence and fell onto her desk. She unrolled it, and just as she read its contents, a shrill whistle sounded from the Canterlot train station. Loyalty frowned as Eliza's mind rebelled and shook off her dream. She had thought the creation perfect, an excellent blend of his greatest wishes merged together into one happy, blissful situation, including the slight sounds of realism by including Moon. It was the best one could do outside the verdant fields, yet the human had found a way to reject it, to claw his way into a different dream. Thankfully, his mind was still asleep, still believed that he was not in agonizing pain as the Crystal Heart's magic continued to try and rend his physical form from existence. She was making steady progress, and with the help of the mortal ponies, his body was stable, but she still had a great deal left to do. His body was not designed to redirect any amount of magic, and she was forced to go cell by cell, stealing the heart's magic away before the cells could die from overload. The only luck she was having was that the healing magic didn't actually flow into his cells, it merely mended them. Had the opposite effect been true, the unicorns at the bedside would have been steadily helping kill the poor human. Loyalty rubbed at her horn as she finished purging his heart of magic, and she moved on to his lungs, leaving behind a simple spell to clean any remaining blood cells of magic. She hated how thorough the heart had been, and she knew exactly who was responsible. Honesty was watching her, trying to contact her, but Loyalty ignored her errant sister's pleas. She could stew on her guilt for a time. Only when Eliza was well again would she deal with honesty.
May I help?
Loyalty felt her meld with the human's body slip as she regarded laughter. The white alicorn smiled lightly as Loyalty regained her bearings, compartmentalizing a portion of her consciousness to hold conversation, while the rest of her mind focused on the task at Hoof.
Why would you want to?
Loyalty asked.
You have made clear for your wish for non-involvement with the human. You even called him a foreign invader on our realm. True,
Laughter said.
but just because I detest his presence doesn't mean I fail to recognize his potential. Besides, there is very little joy surrounding him right now, now is there? That means his well-being falls within my purview, and I would like to help. Just to selfishly see the ponies around him smile, of course.
She flashed a wide grin, which Loyalty did her best to ignore.
Alright, no need to rub it in.
Loyalty grumbled.
If you could begin working on his legs up, he'll finish ensuring his Eternals don't rupture.
Laughter bowed her head slightly. Then she joined Loyalty in her meld. The white alicorn frowned slightly as she focused on the cells of the human's feet.
There are many faults in these horrid legs of his. Maybe if we just change... That is neither our place nor our right.
Loyalty interrupted.
I am merely restoring the human to his natural state before the Crystal Heart's interaction with him. Any more is no better than what honesty and generosity tried to do. And if you have come here as their agent to see me fail, I have not.
Laughter snapped, showing a rare breath of white-hot anger. The alicorn immediately calmed down and focused her task.
I was merely noting that there may be more we can do. These toes of his are ugly little things. A hoof would work so much better. It would be far more durable. Make him like a minotaur, perhaps? He is human.
Loyalty reiterated.
His ugly little toes are his, and they shall remain that way.
She momentarily shifted her focus to Eliza's feet.
Though, I do wonder, are there supposed to be more of them?
Laughter shrugged.
We're all-powerful, all-knowing. Diamond dogs only have 8 toes. And Elias has the same.
Loyalty said with a smile.
Excellent. The damage isn't as severe as I thought. He hasn't lost any parts, which is more than I can say for Shadow.
Laughter rolled her eyes.
I swear, that pony's gonna get himself fully obliterated one of these days. First he antagonizes the sun and moon, then he goes after the candidate Sparkle and the Crystal Heart. I share the human's pleasure in seeing the shadow blown asunder. Of everything that happened this day, that was by far my favorite part.
Working with one of her sisters made the job so much more enjoyable. Loyalty smiled as she recentered herself and went back to work.
Ah, but what about when candidate Sparkle returned the heart? Had it not been this adverse effect, it would have been wonderful.
Night Flash paced at the foot of Red's bed, eyeing the human as Bookbinder snuggled up against his head. The human had survived the train ride in silence, and they had immediately rushed him to the castle. Scalpel had met them halfway, with worried Alicorn and a dozen royal guards in tow. With the bolstered escort, their run to the castle infirmary had been quick, and as soon as they had gotten in, a fresh team of healers had taken over, powering magic through Elias's body, replacing bandages and keeping his wounds closed. It had been nearly 2 hours, but the human's body had finally begun to accept the treatment, and though the occasional bolt of blue energy rippled down his body, they were becoming fewer and fewer. As the energy lessened, his wounds stopped reopening, and he started making progress. After the most harrowing part of the trial had ended, Night Flash and the Legion of Healers had gotten a scolding over transfusing Red with pony blood. But ultimately, Night Flash had only felt joy that the risky method had worked. They had pumped pints into the human, and now that he was more stable, a single blood bag sat on his IV stand, surrounded by saline drips to keep him hydrated. Scalpel was the pony on duty at Red's bedside, his horn pouring more healing magic into the human's body. There was still a great deal of healing left to do, but he was stable, and if they gave him around-the-clock care, he would recover. That was what was important to Night Flash. Red would recover. Now he was struggling with what his place was. As soon as he had been able to, Bookbinder had snuggled up with Red, brushing his hair lightly with her hooves, while she held the Daring Do book in her magic. She read at a whisper, occasionally pausing to smile down at Red, pretending almost as if he was listening. If he was, he didn't show it. His eyes had drifted closed some time ago, but he showed no other signs of consciousness. Night Flash ached to join the human in his bed. He wanted to throw his armor off like Bookbinder and snuggle up to his human, keeping him warm while he healed. But he also had duties to take care of. Luna was absorbing Bookbinder's duties with Scarlet's help, and the pair were making a healthy dent in Red's stacks of paperwork. But there was no other first Centurion. Red trusted him to keep the Legion safe. And unfortunately, the ponies needed him. They were shaken, and most were waiting on the word that Red was in the clear. Waiting meant they weren't working, and if Red was able to speak, Night Flash imagined he would have yelled at them for worrying. He would want them training and drilling. He would want business to resume as usual. The door to the infirmary opened to reveal Snowball, and Night Flash regarded the loveling for a moment, before he sighed and slipped his helmet on. "I'm glad you're here, Auditor," he said. "Keep Red company. Bindy, please give Red my love. I'll go check in on every pony, make sure their gear is being taken care of. Then I might take them for a jog around the city. General Bright might want the Legion to keep moving, so that's what we'll do." He began moving towards the door, only for Snowball to stand in his way with a fanged smile.
Apologies, First Centurion, but you're not going anywhere.
"Excuse you?" Night Flash said.
As Elias's official best friend right now, I get the final say on who looks after him. And that's you and Auditor Bookbinder,
Snowball said.
"You're already right where you belong."
Night Flash frowned. Auditor Binder has ponies picking up her slack, and I made an agreement with Red. Even if I didn't have the duties Red trusts me with, he wouldn't be happy if I shirked them. He nudged Snowball to the side. "I'm going to check on the Legion." Night Flash's ear flicked as he heard his voice again.
"I'm gonna go check on the Legion,"
Snowball mimicked, his voice slightly garbled. Night Flash stopped and stared at the loveling. "What are you doing?"
"I'm going to go check on the Legion,"
Snowball said again. His voice sounded exactly like Night Flash's, and the loveling grinned as he cleared his throat. His horn lit up and Night Flash watched as the snow-white leveling was replaced by the exact copy of himself, armor and all, save for a helmet. Night Flash smiled and plucked the helmet from Night Flash's head. I have fully researched and studied all of your duties as First Centurion, and I will conduct them. Not Flash said as he plopped the helmet onto his head. You stay here and make sure General Bright gets nice and healthy again. There's nothing better than a family cuddle to heal wounds. Night Flash frowned at the loveling. Or you could stay here disguised as me. Red wouldn't notice and he'd know. Not Flash cut in. And then he'd lose trust in me. I will make regular reports on the Legion status, and when he wakes up and questions why you're here helping him heal, you can answer truthfully. Medical science proves that having ponies you care about nearby when healing speeds up the process. You wanted him back on his feet as soon as possible, and this was the way to do it. You can present him with my reports on how the standards were maintained, and then everything is perfect. He'll resume his place as general as healthy as can be, and absolutely filled to bursting with love. Not Flash shrugged. Besides, I could always just put you in a half cocoon right next to him and do this anyway. You're staying here, First Centurion. I'm not asking. Night Flash's frown turned into a scowl. This is blatant manipulation. Not Flash grinned. It sure is. I am a leveling First Centurion. I'm practiced at manipulation. The difference between me and a changeling is that I try to spread as much love around as possible, while they try to hoard it like the greedy little bugs they are. Not Flash nodded towards Red's bedside. Now get in there and make sure he gets better. No pony will know I'm not you. My Night Flash impression's pretty good. He puffed out his chest so that his fluff poked out in the gaps in his armor. I'm First Centurion Night Flash, and I love snuggling ponies and making them run laps when they're making fun of my snuggling. Before Night Flash could protest, Bookbucker giggled.
Wow, just like the real thing.
She winked as Night Flash turned around.
Not nearly as attractive, though.
Night Flash sighed, then looked back to Not Flash. Fine, you might do a good impression, but no lack standards. Tell everything to Centurion Granite and Centurion Ice Blossom. They'll help you make sure everything is exactly how Red wants it to be. Not Flash saluted, grinning the whole while. Yes, sir, First Centurion Fluffy. Night Flash's eyes narrowed. That's 5 laps of the city. You may have convinced me to go along with your plan, but the moment you step out that door, this stops being a game. It shouldn't be considered a game now. Not Flash drooped slightly. Of course, First Centurion. Apologies. I'll get to work immediately. Night Flash gave him a short nod. See that you do. I'll await your report. Not Flash gave him a sharper salute, then he turned and left the infirmary. Night Flash looked back to Red's bedside, and with a slight smile, began to remove his armor. Honestly, loyalty has been the realest element from this whole story since the get-go. Honesty and generosity have been shown to be nothing but manipulative. At least, we haven't seen much of kindness. We haven't seen too much of, who am I missing? Kindness, laughter, and magic. We haven't seen too much of them. We've been referenced with magic because of when Red the Pony came to visit Elias, she was referenced, but we haven't really seen her as an element form, so I'm curious how she is. But loyalty? Loyalty has been there since day one, being like, we should help him, we shouldn't change him, if he doesn't want to be a pony, he shouldn't be. She has been there since day one. Best element for sure, 100%. Anyways, what else is the best is the kindness of my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, my tier 1s, Pony Entertainment, Macario, Lord HiE, Jason, Hyperlink, Jason Master, Balance, Candice, Redeemer, Dark Angel, Blue Floss, Nebula, 9 Games, Sword Brother, Motor, Dreamless Portal, Steve, and Shadow Angel. My tier 2s, Captain Blue, Shadow, Kiagmas, The Anime Ghost, DJX 2000, Elemental Wolf, H1 Wolf, King Potato 20, Mr. Crazy Deacon, Stellar Comet, 212 Trooper, Volio Cod, G-Man 121 Garza, Saint Gunk, Mackenzie, McColas, Nocturne, Papa London, Cloud Zaza, Soul Squib, Sword Brother, Mordred, Artie Bryant, Rihanna Dragon, Steel Spark, Sticks Nobody, Andrew Ingram, Rocky 2522, and Weebu. A big thank you to my previous Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Danish Dash, Maverick, and User 1842. And a large thank you to my current ones, Biss Eclipse and Silent Titan. I appreciate your support so much, and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.